meditation on the Westminster Confession, we continue in chapter 4, now actually on the second section of the chapter, dealing with God's creation of man. Let me read for you the statement of the confession and then make some comments on that. After God had made all other creatures, He created man, male and female, with reasonable and immortal souls, endued with knowledge, righteousness, and true holiness, after His own image, having the law of God written in their hearts, and the power to fulfill it, and yet under a possibility of transgressing, being left to the liberty of their own will, which was subject unto change. Beside this law written in their hearts, they received a command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which while they kept, they were happy in their communion with God, and had dominion over the creatures. Last week we saw that God is the creator of the heavens and the earth. That all of reality is basically two. There is God, the creator, who is eternal, who has no beginning and no end. And then there is the creation, which has a beginning, put in place by God Himself. And it is arranged and upheld by God throughout all of its course. God has ordained all that should take place within the world, and He will bring this world to a conclusion to the point in time when there is a new heavens and a new earth. He created this world in 6 days. And my understanding of that is just as you read it in Genesis 1. 6 literal days. I don't see that there's any obstacle to that, even in the forms of science today and its explorations of the history of the world. Scientists suggest that perhaps the world is 13, 14 billion years of age or even greater. But it's apparent in Scriptures that man was created with a parent age. Adam and Eve were created as adults. They were not infants, they were adults. So there was a parent age. This reminds us that there was no falsehood on God's part by creating the world with a parent age. It's very evident right from the start that that was the case. And so some who object to a 6-day creation say, well, it suggests that God misleads people by leaving fossils on the ground or a parent age in the earth. That's simply not the case. It's very evident right from the start that God intended there to be a parent age in the creation. Now, this section of the confession focuses more on His creation of Adam and Eve. There in the Garden of Eden, God made all the other creatures, but He created man as male and female. So the confession recognizes the full humanity, of course, of both male and female. They are made in the image of God. They are mutually complementary. God originally made Adam and Eve for each other in that garden. Eve was made as a helper for Adam in his cultural activity in subduing the earth. This is the natural way in which God has created us to relate to one another. I've been reading recently in the writings of Dr. Peter Jones, where he talks about how the world is of two, not of one. Our modern age denies that, suggests that all reality is one, that there is no creator, that the material world ever existed, and as a consequence, that metaphysical view has its impact upon our sexuality. And that's why you have this rampant emphasis on homosexuality or transgenderism and these kinds of things, where the distinctions between the sexes are lost, and everybody is equal and the same. Though this in part reflects the fact that there is this rebellion against God as the Creator, and the way that He formed and fashioned us as male and female, distinct yet united in our humanity. God created us with reasonable and immortal souls. Reasonable, that is, we have a mind by which we can view all things, we can think. But then further, immortal, the soul living beyond the death of this body. Not immortal in the sense that we have a kind of reincarnation episode where we pass through one life after the other, and at some point become a butterfly, and then a bee, and then who knows, maybe Muhammad Ali. It goes back a ways, doesn't it now? But the idea of reincarnation has no connection with the immortality of the human soul. We remain a human soul when we pass from this life, even though the body decays. Our souls have a beginning at that point when we are born. They did not have a pre-existence and suddenly enter into the world. They have that beginning when we are born, but we are born with an immortal soul. That soul, we are endowed with knowledge, righteousness, and true holiness. Three different aspects that roughly correspond with our prophetic calling, our kingly calling, and our priestly calling before God. We are prophets, priests, and kings in God's world. And so we understand the world around us. Our mind, our intellect coordinates with the world around us so that we can understand and know truth. Righteousness, that subjection of our hearts and lives to God's will, fulfilling His law throughout the course of life. There is truth and morality in Scripture, and then finally, true holiness. We are devoted to God. We are spiritual beings that have our proper relationship with God Himself. We are created for fellowship with Him. And so we are set apart from the world for God. And so God has created all mankind in this way, after His own image. This surely sets us apart from a theistic evolutionary arrangement where man just gradually evolves over history and time, and certainly we can debate that later, but certainly an evolutionary point of view where man is not made in the image of God. He really is just an animal. And if man is just an animal, then he can be treated as an animal. He can be forced as an animal. He can be killed and butchered as an animal. But Christianity reminds us that we are made in God's image. And when you strike a man, you're striking the God who made him in His own image. But we'll pick up our meditation on this part of the confession next time, because there are very important things to consider with regard to the position of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and this time of temptation or testing that they had in the garden. And Lord willing, we'll pick that up again next